Okay, and we're going live.
Is there a delay?
3, 2, 1. And take it away, Todd.
Welcome to Prime Time in the ATL. I'm Todd Quarterman for Stephanie Stallworth this evening. JJ is also not in. Breck Smith is on the board out in Los Angeles, and Mark Mancini is covering the Los Angeles Clippers game tonight, which will be broadcast on national television on ESPN. We got a fun-filled show. I've got Dave Cohen, the voice of Georgia State Sports, calling in at 8:10. And then I have Deshaun Tate of 92.9 The Game, college basketball insider, and also NBA basketball insider, covers the Hawks here in Atlanta. We'll talk about the Atlanta Hawks. We'll also talk about Michigan State and Michigan in college basketball, and also the situation with Mark D'Antonio on yesterday resigning as the head football coach at Michigan State the day before National Signing Day, which was today. So an interesting day in sports. Before we get to that, you can call us at 678-280-7123, 678-280-7123. I will take your calls, except for the time when we have guests. Once again, the number is 678-280-7123. You can reach me on Twitter at CORDER, Todd, TODD. You can reach JJ at JJ Get You One. You can reach Stephanie at ATL Prime Sport, at ATL Traffic Lady, and you can get us at ATL Prime Sports. You can also reach Mark Mancini on Twitter at Mancini Sports. Good evening once again, everybody. Welcome to the show. Glad you're here. Interesting day in sports. We start right off with the police chase at the Kansas City Chiefs football Super Bowl championship parade, as two people were arrested. You got to be able to see the video. It was like watching PD live. Pretty scary situation for all the people that were there watching the situation, and the police did an excellent job of apprehending the suspects. So that definitely was a major headline. Also, let's get into what we're going to talk about this evening. Let's talk about the Super Bowl, a fantastic game. Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs for winning it. They won the ball game 31-10, scoring 21 points in the last 6 minutes of the ball game, which brings us to our subject tonight of Kyle Shanahan. All you Falcon fans out there were probably just loving the last 6 minutes of the Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator here in Atlanta when the Falcons blew a 28-3 lead with 17 minutes to play, losing the game and the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots in overtime, 34-28. A lot of people here blame Kyle Shanahan for the loss. It wasn't entirely his fault. We don't need to get into that. We need to talk about what happened yesterday. Kyle Shanahan, now the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. He is part of two of the biggest blown leads in Super Bowl history. We just explained about the one with the Falcons. And, of course, they were up 20-10 with 6.5 minutes to play against the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday. A lot of folks are blaming head coach Kyle Shanahan for this loss. I think it's kind of unfair. There were some key plays in the game. Blame Kyle Shanahan for not running the ball. But against this Kansas City Chiefs offense, you can't sit on it. You've got to be able to mix in pass and run. The 49ers, I thought the play calling was fine. I mean, you had to attack the Kansas City defense. The Chiefs D-line, led by Jones and company, batted down passes. They were able to get to Garoppolo. He was under duress. Yes, he did make several throws. If you want to blame somebody other than Shanahan, you should look at Garoppolo and that offensive line. Players lose games. Coaches generally do not. Garoppolo missed a wide open Kittle on a couple of plays. The 49ers just did not play well in the fourth quarter. They played extremely well in the second and third quarter, but they were not able to put away the Chiefs, who, Patrick Mahomes ended up being the MVP of the game. Just a fantastic performance by Mahomes, especially in the fourth quarter. Overall, he was very ordinary during the game. But the last 6 minutes of the game, he had that Derek Jeter clutch gene in him, and he was able to lead the Chiefs to the 3 game-winning scores in the last 6 minutes to win the Super Bowl. So, once again, Falcon fans were pretty thrilled to see the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan lose. Whether that's fair or not, that's up to each individual to decide. Myself, putting it all on Kyle Shanahan was pretty unfair. Let's go to our second topic before Dave Cohen, the voice of Georgia State Sports, calls in at 8:10 here in about 4 minutes or so. Let's talk about the big trade here involving the Atlanta Hawks. The 4-team deal, which was agreed upon yesterday. The Houston Rockets, they ended up getting forward Robert Covington. He will head to the Houston Rockets from the Timberwolves. And this is the great news for the Falcons. For the Hawks. They got center Clint Capella, who goes from Houston to Atlanta. This trade involved 12 players. It's the largest trade since 2000. That's unbelievable. Like I said, the main pieces in the trade, the Hawks were the Rockets received Robert Covington. He averages about 13 points a game. And the Atlanta Hawks received Clint Capella, 25 years old. Yes, they're going to lose a first-round draft pick. But this guy is, he's a true, legitimate center. He averages almost 14 a game. And gets about 14 rebounds a game and about 2 assists. This is a big-time player for the Atlanta Hawks. And, Minnesota received Malik Beasley. He averages about 8 a game in the trade. And also received Evan Turner from the Hawks. But, the big player to me, when you look at the Hawks, they got a big-time young center, Clint Capella, who's about 25 years old, and they sorely need him. They need him not only on the offensive end to help Trae Young and company and John Collins, but on the defensive end, they need him because this is a guy that will, grab about 14 boards a game. As you know, the Hawks are having severe trouble on defense. They give up about 117 points in a game in the NBA, which is almost dead last. It's kind of hard to win games when you're giving up about 117 a night. And they need a protector around the rim. They just are they don't play very good defense on the perimeter, and they're even worse around the rim. And this is where Clint Capella will help John Collins out. They just, Atlanta centers, they're not, this is a huge upgrade from Damian Jones or Alex Lynn. There's just no doubt about it. Now with DeAndre Hunter, Kevin Huerter, Cam Reddish, and Collins, the Hawks are building a team of length, shooting, and athleticism around Trae Young. Trae Young's going to go to the All-Star game. He's had an excellent season, as everyone knows. Yes, the Hawks as a season as a whole, it's been a complete failure. You're last in the Eastern Conference. And as strange as it sounds, you're less than 10 games out of the last playoff spot. So everybody is jumbled together. There's not many games to go in the NBA. You're about 30 games or so to go during the regular season. So this is a situation for the Hawks where they can just work on getting better, getting better play. I expect them now with Clint Capella to have a much better record down the stretch than they did the first 50 games approximately this season, which has been an utterly disappointment. Yes, I know they missed John Collins several games, but this team was projected to fight for a playoff spot, and they're not even close, which is really disappointing. So now this trade, when you look at it from the Rockets' perspective, they wanted Covington, and they wanted him bad, and they've been looking at him for a long time. So, to me, this guy's a career 36% three-point shooter. And, at 6'11", he's an elite wing defender, and he's going to fit perfectly into the Rockets, who, they're a pretty switch-heavy defense that Houston, they like to employ this. They're middle of the pack defensively in the NBA and 15th, and this is going to help them. But, it's sad that they had to get rid of a player the stature of Capella, that you got, a Capella, because if you're going to give up something, to get something, you have to give up something. And, I look at the Rockets, I'd give them a B on this trade for this grade. And our Atlanta Hawks here, I would give them a B plus. I mean, this to me, Capella is definitely worth a first round pick. These first round picks in the NBA, most, a lot of them are just not ready to come in and especially play right away or even start unless you're a top 10 or top 15 pick. So Clint Capella, fantastic basketball player, should get a double-double every night and help the Atlanta Hawks. You can reach us here at 678-280-7123. Our guest this evening is Dave Cohen, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers football, basketball, and baseball program at Georgia State. Dave is on the road this evening in Louisiana. Dave, welcome to ATL Prime Sports.
How you guys doing? Appreciate you having me. Yeah, we're out here in Lafayette, Louisiana, getting ready to start a 2-game Sun Belt Conference road trip with Georgia State basketball tomorrow night at the world-famous Cajun Dome in Lafayette. So looking forward to that one. And we'll be in Monroe, Louisiana on Saturday against the ULM Warhawks. So two games in 4 days, and then we'll be back to Atlanta.
Well, Dave, I'll tell you what, great having you on. I really appreciate it. It's just myself this evening. JJ is out, and so is Stephanie. So it's just me, and I've been out for quite some time, so I'm finally somewhat back in the saddle. When I look at these teams, that the Panthers are playing, they should handle these clubs. They beat the Raging Cajuns back on the 6th of January, 90-52, and they also beat Louisiana Monroe on the 11th, 84-62. I realized those games were at home, where it seems like, let's face it, Georgia State has played much better. They're 9-1 at home this season, 5-7 on the road. Before we talk about the matchup, why is the difference of record on the road?
Well, one of the things that we got to point out, obviously, is when we beat Louisiana Lafayette in Atlanta, as you mentioned, back a few weeks ago, they were without a number of key players. But a couple of those players are back. P.J. Hardy, a senior point guard, and Milik Wilson, a freshman guard. Both those guys averaging double digits, Wilson at 12 and Hardy at 10. So they're going to look a little bit different than they did when we saw them in Atlanta. I mean, they came into Atlanta basically, I think, with 7 scholarship players traveling with them on that particular trip. Some injuries had kind of, left them obviously quite shorthanded. So even though we're playing for the most part pretty well, we did drop another game to Troy at home last Saturday. But again, Louisiana Lafayette will look a little bit different when we see them tomorrow night at the Cajun Dome, just because of the players that were out that they've now got back. They're going to be a little bit more together as a group than what they were before coming and making that Georgia trip for them a few weeks ago.
Dave, what's the difference, though, between the play on home and away? Once again, I said that they were 9-1 at home and 5-7 on the road. Why is that?
It's a good question. When Lefty Drizel was coaching at Georgia State, if he told me once, he told me, 100 times, good teams win on the road. And this is a good Georgia State basketball team. They're 15-8 and 8-4. Realize that some of the losses that have come this year on the road came early to a pretty good program at College of Charleston, and then obviously at Duke, that was number 2 in the nation at the time, at Georgetown. Recently, some of the road losses have been at Coastal Carolina. That was a close game, lost by 2. Was a difficult loss at Arkansas State, although they're top 4 in the Sun Belt Conference. That was a 3-point loss. And then the loss at Troy. For some reason, Troy, no matter how good or how bad of a season they're having, when we play them at Trojan Arena in Troy, Alabama, and this year, for instance, back at our place in downtown Atlanta, it's just always a tough game. If you look at Troy, just on that Georgia trip, they got blown out at Georgia Southern, 80-something to 50-something. And then they come into Atlanta and, they play maybe one of their better ball games of the season. It's something about that Georgia State blue when Troy sees it. They get up for the ball game, maybe more so than they do for some of those other games. And they just seem to play us really well. But, some of our losses on the road, again, as I mentioned, have been to some pretty good teams. And then the others have been relatively close losses. The games were winnable, but we just were not able to finish for whatever reason.
You're listening to Dave Cohen, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers basketball program here on ATL Prime Sports. Dave, these are big games. Georgia State is only 2.5, besides Arkansas, Little Rock, and these are huge games if they want to, win the regular season in the Sun Belt and get great positioning for the Sun Belt Conference tournament. It's just these are huge games on this Louisiana road swing. I understand against the Raging Cajuns, Corey Allen, he scored 24 points again, and he's averaging 15.3 points a game, a 6'2", 205 guard. Actually, all the top 5 scorers on this team are all guards. That stood out to me. And, his hometown is Ypsilanti, Michigan, which is pretty close to my neck of the woods. Tell us about Corey's game, why he was successful the first time around against the Raging Cajuns, and what does he need to do to continue to be successful?
Well, Corey's had a pretty good start to his the Georgia State portion of his collegiate basketball career. He was with us all last year. He transferred in from the University of Detroit after coming out of Ypsilanti, as you mentioned. And this year, a benefit of being able to sit and kind of become accustomed. Well, I say that, become accustomed to the style of play, but in this instance, he came in when Ron Hunter was still the head basketball coach. And then, of course, Coach Hunter leaves following the NCAA tournament team of a year ago, winds up at Tulane, and Georgia State hires Rob Lanier, who was an associate head coach at the University of Tennessee. So a little bit different style, but Corey, for the most part, has started all 23 games this year. As you mentioned, averaging 15 points, 3 rebounds, a really good three-point shooter. He's taken, 160 shots this year behind the three-point line. He's made 58 of them. So a big part of his ball game is the perimeter shot. If you look at the starting lineup, it is very guard-oriented with Kane Williams, Corey Allen, Justin Roberts, and Damon Wilson. Damon kind of a wing player at 6'5". Georgia State has some pretty good post players, but they're young. Jalen Thomas is a 6'10" freshman from Detroit, and Joe Jones, a 6'9" freshman from Buffalo, New York. Both of those guys averaging 5 and 4 points respectively. And then you've got a kid by the name of Nelson Phillips, who's a sophomore out of Warner Robins. But again, you look at the core, and the core is Kane Williams, Damon Wilson, Corey Allen, and Justin Roberts. And you're right, 3 of those guys are 5'9", 6'2", 6'3". Damon, again, a little bit more of a wing player at 6'5". So it is a very guard-oriented lineup for Georgia State this year. They are very high on the big men. They're just going to bring them along as they bring them along. And so in that instance, Corey Allen's playing, 30-plus minutes a ball game most nights. And, as a result, leading us in scoring at 15 points a game, as I mentioned. But again, the core of his game is knocking down those long-range three-point shots.
You're listening to Dave Cohen here on ATL Prime Sports, voice of Georgia State basketball, football, and baseball. Dave, like we mentioned earlier, they handled the Raging Cajuns successfully the first time around. They've got some of their injured players back, as you mentioned. What does Georgia State have to do to win this game? What is a couple of things that you can point out that are critical for this team to be successful?
Well, anytime you're talking basketball, some of the same things will tend to make their way to the surface. Number one, got to shoot the ball well. In our instance, got to shoot the ball well long range, because again, we're bringing our bigs along slowly, so it's a little bit more of a perimeter-oriented offense. Cannot get into a situation where you're turning the ball over at a high rate. And that's obvious. You got to be able to hold on to the basketball and be able to convert on the offensive end. And on the other hand, defensively, you got to be able to turn them over and turn those turnovers into points, which when Georgia State has been successful this year, they've been done pretty well in that. Georgia State going into this game, they're ranked number one in the Sun Belt Conference in scoring offense, field goal percentage, and then 3-point defense, 3-point percentage defense, and steals. If you look at some of the stats on these guys, the guys that I mentioned, Kane Williams, top 5 in the Sun Belt in steals with 34. Right behind him, Justin Roberts and Nelson Phillips with 28 steals. So Georgia State does a pretty good job of, coming up with takeaways, but they've got to be able to continue to do that. The Cajun Dome is not an easy place to play. We've had success there before with past teams, but this game kind of gives me the feeling that I get when I go to Troy. No matter how good they are, no matter how bad they might be, no matter how much they may be struggling, it's always a challenge. They usually draw a pretty decent crowd. It's a big building, 12,000 seats here in Lafayette, Louisiana. They don't sell 12,000 tickets here, but they usually play pretty well for the most part in the arena. Again, they're not having the kind of year that they've had. You look at their record; they're 9-14 and 4-8 in the Sun Belt. But this historically, since we've been in the Sun Belt, Louisiana Lafayette has been one of those programs that's hovering around the top 3 in the Sun Belt Conference standings. They're just having a little bit of a down year this year based on players that have graduated, moved on, and then obviously the injury situation that they've gone through the last few weeks. So got to come out, shoot the ball well, take care of the basketball, cannot give up offensive rebounds, cannot give up second chance opportunities. And again, our guys are going to have to, score in and around their averages. Kane Williams is averaging 13. Damon Wilson is averaging 11. I mentioned Corey's averaging 15 and Justin's averaging 13. We got to get points out of those guys, and then hope that your bigs and Thomas and Jones, and then your wing player like Nelson Phillips, who's played pretty well this year since Coach Lanier got him. His minutes have gone up, and he's, for the most part, brought energy to the floor, unlike some of the other players. So it's going to have to be a combination of all that in order to get out of here with a win. And then Monroe is kind of in a similar situation. They're struggling this year, so it's an opportunity, as you mentioned earlier, to come on the road to Louisiana and get out of the state of Louisiana with 2 more wins.
You mentioned Justin Roberts, and you just mentioned Louisiana Monroe. He had 23 points against them last game, high score of the game, 5'9", 170. Sophomore out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Maybe he can go ahead and have that same type of ball game. But, it's just so hard to, win on the road in this conference. You just mentioned that. What are the players we have to look out for? This is the final question, and then I'll have to let you go. Tell me the players we have to look out for Louisiana Monroe and the Raging Cajuns this weekend. Tell us about that.
Well, I'll focus on the Raging Cajuns. They're the straw that has kind of stirred the drink for them so far. There's kind of 2 of them. And again, based on the 2 guys that I mentioned that have missed significant games this year for whatever reason. But the one player or 1 or 2 players that we're going to have to keep an eye on, and it's not a deep roster, but Jalen Johnson, a 6'7" junior from Baton Rouge. He transferred in from St. Louis University, so he's a former Billiken. He has started all 23 games for them, averaging 15.7 rebounds, good free throw shooter, okay 3-point shooter, not really his game. Cedric Russell, a 6'2" junior guard from Alexandria, Louisiana, has played in 22 games, so he has stayed away from the injury bug this year like Johnson has. He's averaging 12 points and 4 rebounds, and he's one of their better 3-point shooters. So those 2 right there, along with Tyrus Smith, who's averaging about 8. And then we didn't see them in Atlanta, but I mentioned P.J. Hardy and Mylek Wilson averaging 9 and 12 points respectively. We'll see how they play as, they kind of play their way back into conference game shape. And I'm sure they're looking forward to playing against us since we beat them as badly as we did in Atlanta. Those two guys were not there to be a part of that ball game. I'm sure they're kind of lying in wait, waiting for Georgia State to arrive in the Cajun Dome on Thursday night.
Well, Dave, thanks so much for joining the show. Good luck at the games on tomorrow and Saturday. Tell us how we can go ahead and listen to them, and I'll let you go.
All right, as always, appreciate you having me. Thursday night we'll be on radio, 88.5 FM, WRAS, also WRAS.org. And for those fans that are listening, everybody, of course, has some sort of a mobile device, iPhone, an iPad, so on and so forth. You can download the brand new Georgia State Athletics app. Everything we do is streamed audio-wise to the app, and you can use your phone to listen as well. So 88.5 FM on the radio and the GSU Athletics mobile app on your iPhone or your iPad or whatever your mobile device of choice is. So Thursday night at 8, Saturday afternoon at 3 Eastern time for Georgia State basketball here in the state of Louisiana.
Dave, safe travels and good luck, and hopefully you come home with a sweep.
I appreciate it. That would be good, and we'll look forward to hopefully talking to you next week.
Talk to you next week. That's Dave Cohen, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers football, basketball, and baseball. And their season, or baseball season, should be getting started here rather shortly if it hasn't already started. College baseball starts way earlier than Major League Baseball. You're listening to ATL Prime Sports. Give us a call at 678-280-7123. I'm Todd Quarter. I'll be with you until 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this evening. I believe we have Wayne on the line from Memphis. Wayne, you're at the Memphis basketball game tonight. Welcome to the show.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can. You're at the Memphis basketball game, correct?
I am here live from the FedEx Forum. Temple shooting some free throws now, so me talking's not going to be a problem.
I like it. Who's Memphis playing this evening?
They're playing Temple tonight, Temple Owls. And the score is tied up right now. Lots of fouls going on from Temple. They have already put Memphis in the double bonus, or the 1-and-1. And Temple shooting now because they got fouled on a shot. But lots of three-pointers happening, and, it's kind of a slow start for Memphis, but it should be a pretty exciting game going forward.
Well, Wayne, Memphis has had one heck of a basketball season. I know they had the situation with their star player who's no longer with them, and he's going to go ahead and enter the NBA draft in Wiseman. But Penny Hardaway has done a really good job to kind of keep the team really focused, and they're playing well. This is a club that's a top 25 team and will be dangerous in the NCAA tournament.
Right. Well, it's also a really young team. I think between Memphis and Kentucky, they probably got two of the youngest teams that are on the court in this division of college basketball.
Well, that's an awesome story for them to continue to focus and not, despite the situation with James White. You mentioned the officials are calling the game tight from what I'm understanding. Is that correct?
Well, sometimes when you're a fan of the home team and you're at home, you really disagree with the ref's calls, even if it's something you didn't see. So I don't lean on the refs too much unless they show a replay and it's obvious they missed something up.
Boy, I tell you, I watched the Michigan-Ohio State game last night, and, they might as well put pads on. I mean,
no.
the grabbing, the clutching, the hooking, the tripping, you name it, it wasn't called. I mean, it was just I don't mind a physical basketball game, but you just can't allow that to happen. And from the Big Ten officiating standpoint, I hope I don't see another game like that again this year. It was brutal, but I'll tell you what, they were consistent. They did call it the same way for each side. So, you can't complain about that. You just like to see the officials make the calls. What did you think about the Super Bowl and Kansas City's miraculous comeback?
Well, I've got a system of watching professional football, The
What is
first,
that?
the first play from scrimmage after the initial kickoff will determine the winner of the game. And if you look at that game, Kansas City's first possession, first play, they got about 8 yards and looked really good. So, that kind of determined how I thought the game was going to go. And if you remember back when Atlanta played in, I think it was the Super Bowl, their first possession, they had a muffed snap. And, it ended up being a losing game for them. So it's strange how that works out.
Yeah, it is. It is very strange. I mean, it was one heck of a game. I mean, I was going to – what'd you think of the halftime show? I mean, I shouldn't be surprised because of, it was in Miami. You were going to see that type of culture there. But, some of it was inappropriate. But in today's day and age, the way times have changed, it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't mind that type of show if it's on a HBO or something. But prime time in a sports game that there's going to be a variety of people watching, maybe not such a great choice. But I didn't really see it because I was fixing a sandwich. My wife watched it, and she seemed to enjoy it.
You know what? That's the amazing. You just hit the nail on the head. A lot of the women really enjoyed it. I think the men really enjoyed it too, except for the folks that have young children. But, just make the kids leave the room and come back. I mean, that's just the way
Right.
it is today. What is the score now in that Memphis game?
It's 19-18. Memphis has the ball. 7:45 left in the first half. Three-pointer up and missed. Possession back to Temple. So I could do play-by-play for you, but I'm not sure you'd be interested in it.
Well, Temple's a interesting team. All them schools from the Philadelphia area, there's 5 of them. They have a rich history in basketball. And, you watch the school that has predominantly a rich history in college basketball coming down. And, that's kind of neat to see.
Yeah. Well, that's why this conference is really an up-and-coming basketball conference, and it's becoming a good football conference.
It is.
But
the program is good.
Yeah, I think in a future show, maybe we'll get to talking about fans and how they treat or respect each other, either online or in person. But that'll be another topic for another show. And
I agree.
I'm gonna let y'all continue with the show, and I'm gonna enjoy what's going on here for the rest of this first half.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for calling, and thank you for supporting the show. Wayne from Memphis, it's always great to hear from you, and go Memphis for you, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right.
All right, that's Wayne from Memphis, a friend of the show, big Memphis college basketball and football fan. Always calling in and talking about the Memphis Tigers. He's also a supporter of the Auburn Tigers. We're waiting on Deshaun Tate to call in to go ahead and join us here on ATL Prime Sports. He covers college basketball insider and NBA basketball insider. Works for 92.9 The Game here in Atlanta. Callers, you can call us at 678-280-7123. 678-280-7123. Be glad to put you on the air and talk whatever you want to talk about. Big weekend in sports. Gigantic weekend. A lot of NFL news, and before Deshaun calls us here, we expect his phone call momentarily. A lot of big news in the National Football League, and a lot of big stories. A lot of free agent quarterbacks. A lot of big names. Tom Brady, obviously. Dak Prescott could be a free agent in March. Tom Brady will be a free agent if he isn't signed in March. You can go on and on with big names, but I'm going to stick with those two right now momentarily. An amazing story to me could be, what if it all comes down to money, of course. What happens if Tom Brady becomes a free agent and the Cowboys do not sign Dak Prescott? Do they give Dak the franchise tag? They could. But if Tom Brady is a free agent, and Dak Prescott's asking, say, for $40 million, and the Cowboys are steadfast at staying at $30 million, what do you do? Do you give Tom Brady a call if you're Jerry Jones, who's an absolute marketing genius, by the way? And Tom Brady can't come to terms with New England, you could have Tom Brady come in and quarterback the team. It will be a shame for Dallas to lose Dak Prescott, though, who has, improved a lot in his career and has made some strides. I wouldn't say Dak is not an elite NFL quarterback. He may become one day, but he's not right now. So if the Cowboys decide that they can get Tom Brady for 2 seasons, do you let Dak Prescott go and draft another quarterback and groom him so when Brady's done, you have him? Is it possible for Dallas to get Tom Brady? I guess it is. I think it would be a fit. The Cowboys have, them and the San Francisco 49ers have the most 25 and under talent in pro basketball. 25 and under talent. In the NFL pro basketball. I've got basketball on my mind since I'm expecting Deshaun Tate to call in momentarily. They've got 25 and under players. They've got the most, the most talent, 25 and under in the NFL, like I said, along with the 49ers. So, Dallas is really set at the skill positions. They just are. They've got Zeke at running back. New England doesn't have a back like Zeke. They look who they've got at receivers. They've got a fantastic wide receiver core, does the Cowboys. New England does not have great wide receivers. They do not at all. So, what do you do if you're Dallas? You go after Tom Brady. Is he still good enough to win you a Super Bowl? He absolutely is. Anybody that thinks that he's not, and yes, you can see some slippage in his game this year, and it does go fast when you're 40 plus. There's no doubt about it. There's always that risk. So, excuse me, there is that risk, but it would be a risk worth taking. You don't want to pay Dak $40 million. He's not worth $40 million a year. No way, no how. And now that Mike McCarthy's brought on, and hey, the Cowboys are expected to win, and they're expected to win big time. You brought in Amari Cooper from a trade from last year, from Oakland. You brought him in. New England doesn't have a player like that. They don't have a player like Zeke Elliott. They don't have the offensive line that the Cowboys do. They don't. They don't have a Frederick on their offensive line. They don't have a Collins on their offensive line. Defensively, they're really good. And Dallas is a good defensive team. These are, Michael Gallup for Dallas switching back to offense. He caught almost 70 balls this year for over 1,000 yards. Excuse me. He had about 6 touchdowns. Cooper had 8. This is a good football team. Tony Pollard. He ran for, 450 plus this year, helping out Zeke Elliott. New England does not have these type of skill players. No disrespect to Julian Edelman, who came up clutch in last year's Super Bowl and was named the MVP against the Rams. No disrespect at all. But you're Tom Brady. You come right to Dallas. You're ready to win. Now, it's a tough NFC conference. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Tough NFC conference. So, hey, think about it. Big time. This will be a chance for Tom Brady to come in and win if he doesn't come to terms with the Patriots. Let's hope he does come to terms with the Patriots. He's been with them 20 years. It would be a shame if he put on another NFL uniform. It would be really a shame. Give us a call. Tell us what you think. 678-280-7123 as we're waiting for Deshaun Tate to call in. NBA and college basketball insider, 92.9 The Game here in Atlanta. We're talking NFL until he gets here. A lot of great storylines in the NFL, and to me, that's something that when talking about, excuse me, the free agent quarterbacks, it's a possibility that Brady could come to Dallas. I don't know how much of a possibility. I'm not going to say it's probable. I'm only going to say it's possible. It is possible. It really is. I mean, it absolutely is possible. Now, it's not probable. Well, I think Brady will end up re-signing, no doubt, with New England. And I do think Dak Prescott's going to sign with Dallas. But the Cowboys can't give him $40 million a year and be competitive and afford to pay anybody else. Honestly, I don't know how any team's going to pay a quarterback $40 million a year and be successful under the NFL salary cap. Yes, it is going up, but it's not going up that much. It's just not. I mean, you know, you're better off drafting a young quarterback, building a team around him. Excuse me, building the team around him. And then when you've got the team ready, he's ready. You know, you have him under contract for 5 years or whatever it is. You can use that franchise tag. This is what Dallas can do for 1 year. If they can't come to terms and they don't get another quarterback, just franchise tag Dak Prescott and go with it this year. You've got Mike McCarthy coming in, highly successful coach from the Green Bay Packers. You know, won a Super Bowl with Green Bay against Pittsburgh in Cowboy Stadium, the one that Jerry Jones built, AT&T Stadium. So, you know, Jerry has seen Green Bay up and close many times. Has always been impressed with Mike McCarthy. You know, there are a lot of people out there that criticized the Cowboys for hiring Mike McCarthy. And I thought, you're out of your mind. You're absolutely unequivocally out of your mind. This man won a ton of football games, a ton with Green Bay. It's a shame he really didn't stay with the Packers. But, you know, in pro sports, you know, unless you're New England, in Bill Belichick, these coaches don't stay real long time. I mean, name a lot of NFL coaches that are out there that are staying with one team many years. You can probably put them on one hand. I would definitely think you could put them on one hand. John Harbaugh of Baltimore. I mean, look at Dallas. They had now, you know, they had all those years with Jason Garrett, who now is the offensive coordinator for the rival New York Giants. How ironic is that? So, you know, Jason Garrett was in Dallas a while. McCarthy, we said in Green Bay, was a while. You know, Mike Tom, Pittsburgh is an example. They've only had 3 coaches since the 70s with Chuck Noll. They have Bill Cowher, and now they've got Mike Tomlin. Heck, the Cleveland Browns, they change coaches like people change clothes. They change coaches every year. They can't get any stability there. I don't understand why these franchises change coaches every year or two. It's really hard to get some stability. But, you know, back to what I was talking about with Dak and Tom Brady. It's a situation that that is unique, very unique, that could come up. I mean, could you imagine the marketing tool Jerry Jones could use if he got Tom Brady? Could you imagine the jerseys flying off the wall? I bet it would be close to the number 1 jersey sale in the NFL. I'm actually going to say it would be. Well, maybe not over Patrick Mahomes. Lamar Jackson's coming up. He had a heck of a year. National Football League most valuable player. So, and you know, this Mahomes kid, though, if I may talk about him just for a minute, we switch over. This kid's got Derek Jeter qualities. A super clutch gene. Give us a call at 678-280-7123. Still waiting for Deshaun Tate. That's interesting. He has not called in yet. Our college and NBA basketball insider, 92.9 The Game here in the Atlanta area. Going to talk Michigan State basketball. And also the situation with Mark D'Antonio. So he's going to be calling in shortly. I was just notified. That's awesome. That will be great. So I will. That's awesome. I was just notified he will be calling in. So back to the situation with the quarterback and the Cowboys. The marketing. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys with Tom Brady, they would be a contender, no doubt about it. I think they're a contender with Dak Prescott, with Mike McCarthy coming in. I really do. Excuse me. I really do. I think they're a contender. You know, locally, we can talk about the Atlanta Falcons till Deshaun comes in. I mean, you know, the Falcons, to me, you know, they were the last team to beat the San Francisco 49ers before they lost in the Super Bowl. Do you believe that? Dan Quinn and company, he got another year. He deserved it. There's no doubt about it. A lot of people here wanted Dan Quinn gone. I did not. Dan Quinn has taken the Falcons to the Super Bowl. So, you know, he deserves to stay, deserves some time. It's really hard to win consistently in the NFL. It just is. It's really hard. You know, I mean, it's just super hard. So now we do have Deshaun Tate calling in. Just a second, we'll put Deshaun on the line. You know, I back to Dan Quinn just momentarily. He deserves it. You know, this defense, the team improved itself dramatically from the first half of the season to the second half, and they have stability at quarterback. Falcons don't need a quarterback. I hear people out there telling me the Falcons need a quarterback. They got to throw for over 400, almost 4,500 yards this season. Yes, he threw some picks. He did throw 14 of them. But his offensive line, they couldn't hardly run the ball. Their leading rusher was Freeman at 656 yards. I'm telling you, any quarterback needs a running game, and the Falcons didn't have one. So we'll go ahead and transition and run over to Deshaun Tate, college basketball and NBA Insider 92.9 The Game. Deshaun, welcome to the program. You're a big friend of the show, and I'm glad you better late than never, as they say, right?
Yeah, we're gonna change my last name from Deshaun Tate to Deshaun Late. I apologize for for the delay.
I knew you'd call in. I knew it. I was just talking NFL before you got here, and that's fine. Wow. Speaking of, now we'll switch back over to basketball. Tell me about this Hawks trade. I mean, I talked about it at the beginning of the show. Hawks getting Clint Capella. To me, that's a huge move for the Hawks. A guy that's a double-double machine and only 25 years old. His contract is really friendly.
Yeah, I think one of the things about that particular move, first of all, let me say that I'm not in love with it. I think that the benefit that Clint Capella is getting a lot of the nod, and I'm not saying he's a bad player by any means, because by far he's not. But I think that he is benefiting from being a center that's doing a center's job in a league where that particular position is becoming more extinct, with the exceptions of your Karl Anthony Towns, your Joel Embiid, your Nurkic, and your Jokic, and some of those guys. But there's a piece to this deal that I don't think that a lot of people really recognize very much, and I don't want it to go missed, is that Nene comes over to Atlanta as well and adds another piece up front, which is a need to add another body in the front court where they desperately need. So where there is no Clint Capella, you do have a Nene, a little older Nene as well, but certainly serviceable at the same time. So it's obviously what the Hawks needed. I mean, there was some conversations that I had heard Clint Capella's name brought up. I heard Steven Adams' name brought up. Andre Drummond's name brought up. Maybe even Tristan Thompson. And you got to pardon me because that I don't want to vomit all over the airwaves. I'm pretty sure people wouldn't appreciate that very much when I mention the name Tristan Thompson. But I will say enough to say that I don't think that any of those guys particularly moves the needle in the biggest of ways. I don't think. but it's certainly a fit for Atlanta for defensive purposes, rebounding, but it's not a guy you can dump the ball to down in the middle. Now, I know that Atlanta plays a different kind of style. Trae Young is a ball-dominant guard, and it's perfect to be able to lob it up there to a Capella or a Nene or John Collins as well. So it is fitting, but I still think that there's pieces away. And when Trae Young mentioned that he wanted some help in Atlanta, I'm not particularly sure that Clint Capella is the guy that he was thinking of. Now, for that position, sure, but that particular player, I don't know.
Well, I mean, he averages a double-double for Houston. He might even be better here because, I mean, you know, you got DeAndre Hunter, Kevin Huerter, Cam Reddish, and Collins. I mean, this Deshaun is a good nucleus. I know the record is awful this year, and the reason they're awful is because they don't play a lick a bit of defense. None of them hardly play defense. I mean, they certainly don't play defense around the rim, and they certainly don't play defense around the perimeter. And their help side defense has been horrendous. I mean, this is why this team is where it is. I know they've had some injuries with Collins, but to me, I thought this team would at least challenge for a playoff spot. Did you?
Well, I did. I thought that they would either be right there on the outside looking in or that they would barely get in. I thought at very best case scenario that they would be a 7 seed or slightly right there on the outside looking in at a 9 seed. And that if the Detroit Pistons could get in last year, then this team is just as good, if not better, than last year's Pistons team. But that's really kind of hard to say if they are or aren't from the beginning of the season all the way up until this point, because of the simple fact that John Collins was out with 25 games, and everybody's going to remember that because of the suspension. But you also have, you know, a Cam Reddish who went out with a wrist injury and is currently, you know, not in the best health, if you will, because of, you know, concussion protocol. Same thing with DeAndre Hunter, who's currently out. And previous to that, there was a finger injury. Bruno Fernando wasn't on the floor for personal reasons. Trae Young with some of his ankle issues and things of that nature. So you've got multiple guys, not to mention Kevin Huerter, who's a guy that when he was drafted did not participate in the summer league. Now I'm talking about his rookie year. Didn't participate in the summer league last year. Didn't compete in training camp last year, nor in preseason, and was hardly even ready enough for the regular season. You turn that around into this year where he didn't participate in the those during his rookie year was health reasons. But then you have a situation where, you know, the beginning of the year, this season, where he didn't participate in summer league, not because of health reasons, but didn't participate in summer league, and then didn't participate in training camp again for health reasons, didn't participate in preseason because of health reasons, and wasn't even ready at the beginning of the season for health reasons either. So this is a team that hasn't had the opportunity to gel, get the chemistry up under their belts, and there are a lot of young guys already anyway. I think they probably start the youngest starting 5 in the whole NBA with all 5 guys of age, 24 or younger, or 22 or younger, or something right up in that range. So I like to think that Clint Capella can come in and will be a difference maker. But how many times will they be able to add a number to the left side of the result column? I'm not sure that we're looking at a whole lot.
Well, at this stage, you know, you're just hoping the Hawks just come out and play a good final 30-plus games of the regular season and do as they, you know, as good as they can. The fans will tell you to tank, but it doesn't do any good because they're giving up. They gave up the Nets 2020 first rounder. It's lottery protected for the next 3 years and what was widely really considered to be not a great draft. So they're probably not really worried about it all that much. I think they need to start winning games and set the tone for next season. What do you think, Deshaun?
No, you know what? And I definitely agree with that. I will say this much. This is a team that, forget about the draft for a second. I know that the Travis Schlenk wants to build this team through the draft. I'm not sure if the owner and Tony Ressler wants to do that exact same thing exactly, but this is a team that cannot really afford to get much younger, if I'm just being honest. I mean, they need experienced players, and that kind of alludes back to what you were saying. But in the same token, You know, this is a team that's not trying to tank. They're trying to win now. They want to win now. They're literally attempting to win games, and they're not doing that. So I don't know if that makes matters much worse by any means, but yet still, you know, I still will say that, you know, Clint Capella will be a significant piece to this team and what they're trying to do.
Well, we're going to find out. I want to talk to you 1 second about the other aspect of the trade. Then we'll get off it and we'll go to our college basketball subject. You know, Houston got Robert Covington. That's who they wanted. And, you know, the Rockets, they play as small can get. Somebody told me they're the smallest lineup on the floor since the 1970s. Nobody was over 6'7" or 6'6". You know, I think the Hawks got a really good, you know, I think they did really good in this deal. They might have done better than Houston. Time will tell. What do you think about the Rockets situation quickly?
Well, the Houston Rockets, they do acquire Robert Covington, and I think that's the piece from everything that I'm hearing that they really wanted. But you know that they're a team that's trying to work it within their system. They're trying to just add offense and maybe not a ton of guys defense. They want to outscore you. It's almost like Big 12 football or Pac-12 football. You know, they don't care about getting stops on one end as long as they're the ones with the basketball in their hands at the last second, if a game is tied up or if they're down 1 or 2. You know, but it's clearly as to whose team that this is and the way that they're going to play. So if you're a guy like Robert Covington and you have expectations where one of them is that you will have the opportunity to score the basketball, I can almost feel really comfortable guaranteeing you that you'll be left disappointed because of the guys they have on the team. The clear ones, the elephants in the room being, you know, James Harden and Russell Westbrook. But it's just a style that I'm not in love with exactly. But you know, they've certainly got their work cut out for them. Yet still trying to defend for a world championship. And I'll be honest, it kind of reminds me so much of Philly to an extent, because I just don't think that it's something that's going to happen. I'm one of those people that got to be shown.
Well, we're going to find out for sure. It's an interesting NBA season. Not as many storylines as the NFL, but I have a feeling now the NFL season is done. The NBA season is going to get a lot of attention, and it's really going to start heating up, and it always does the next 30 games before the playoffs. Deshaun, let's switch over. Let's talk about something that we're from the state of Michigan. I'm a Michigan guy. I went to school there years ago. I am an alumnus. I do respect the Michigan State basketball program immensely. I have met Tom Izzo. He's one of the nicest guys I met in sports, period. It's that simple. You know, Michigan State, I watched their game last night, and, you know, they only had 16 assists. Nobody was in double figures. You know, poor Winston, he's been through enough this season with losing his brother, and we don't need to get into that. You know, Tillman only had 9 points, and, you know, he missed the free throw that would have tied the game against Penn State. He had a good game. He had 25 points. It's a Michigan State team that, honestly, I can't figure out as they only sit a half a game out of first place in the Big Ten.
Yeah, you know, in terms of
Can you figure it out? Because I, you know, it just seems like to me too many slow starts, especially on the road this season. Now, they lost a home game for the first time in over a year. So, you know, they don't lose in conference play on their home court. So it shocked me they lost to Penn State. Penn State's an up-and-coming team, you know, but Cash just, I mean, you know, this is a tough year for this kid for personal reasons more than anything else. I just can't figure out the slow start. Can you figure it out? And what can they do to correct it? Because I still think this team has a chance to make noise in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, they're struggling, especially in the first half and starting games out, and you know, they've struggled also quite a bit in regards to perimeter defense, which isn't helping them out a whole lot. And I don't think certainly that starting the season out ranked number 1 in the country helped them out a whole lot either. But one team that you can almost bet your bottom dollar on and take it straight to the bank in Wells Fargo or wherever you bank at, that will be ready in March is Michigan State and Tom Izzo. Now, I'm one that doesn't feel like you should rely on that all the time. And it's hard for me to believe that, that Michigan State, no matter what they look like throughout the course and the duration of the season, no matter what happens, as long as they get in the tournament, you can always rely on them. I think that the Michigan State fan base and Spartan Nation is a little bit spoiled from that aspect, even assuming Final Fours and things like that. But they've just got to find – everybody's talking about how Michigan State has to find a way to get another scorer, a third scorer after Cassius Winston and Xavier Tillman. But let me tell you something. I think it's just really after Cassius Winston. I mean, I've seen so many inconsistencies this year alone from Xavier Tillman, and I think a lot of that kind of stems from not having your Nick Ward from last year, which I told people I really believe that was going to hurt them a little bit more than they was taking notice to. The same thing with Matt McQuaid, who was a outside shooter, probably the best one that they had on the team last year. Kenny Goins was another one of those guys, though he was undersized. He chased down rebounds. He could shoot from outside, and he rebounded the ball very well too. So, they're a team that's got a lot to figure out, and they're young outside of Cassius Winston. And this is a year that 20 years later from the time that they won the national championship, that it's wide open for anybody to go out there and get, and why not it be the team like Michigan State to do it. And while a lot of people aren't very confident in Michigan State right now, me included, with the brand of basketball that they're playing, and they do look pretty bad, but there's a lot of teams that we can say that for around college basketball this year. So it's almost like, you know what, why not us? But in the same token, there's just very few and far in between teams that really look impressive. And those are the Baylors and the San Diego States and the Gonzagas. And there's not very many other teams outside of those three that could easily be a first round or first weekend exit.
Right. You're right about it. There isn't a great team out there. I feel Michigan State, you and I have talked off the air. We feel we need, and so does Tom Izzo. He needs a third guy to stand up. And to me, we've been waiting for Henry to do it. And golly, it just maybe even Rocket Watts sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, Rocket Watts is another one of those pieces. I mean, Gabe Brown, who is, one of the guys that I think has surely brought, a scoring punch of his own, but not nearly consistent enough. And I really hate that so many people's putting some of the scoring or lack thereof on the shoulders of Aaron Henry, but he's certainly a huge piece to Michigan State, being able to make a run when March rolls around. So if I trust anybody to be able to make adjustments during the right time of the year, I mean, I got to put my trust in Tom Izzo for that, but he's got his hands full and his work cut out for him, and it's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. And it's going to be that way for everybody. I mean, you think about, we sit back and we wait on March Madness for all the craziness and the wild and the wacky upsets and buzzer beaters and all this other kind of stuff, all the big time upsets. It's been March Madness all season throughout college basketball this year. We haven't had to sit back and wait on March, but I'm going to enjoy it. I'm almost to the point where I know everybody loves that football stuff. That I call it that football stuff you guys love so much. But now that the Super Bowl is done, it's over with. I'm almost kind of curious to know if I have to, ask the gridiron gods if it's okay for them to fill out my permission slip and see if it's okay for me to have my basketball season back.
Hey, speaking of hoops, let's flip the script real quickly and let's go to my alma mater, Michigan. Your rival, Michigan State mine, but we have a healthy respect for each program. This is the first season for Juwan Howard. It's been an up and down season. You go from unranked to fourth in the country, now back to, unranked, and they're just struggling to say the least. I mean, they're above 500, but they're below 500 in conference play. I mean, they're 4-7 in conference play, 13-9 overall. And, you know, when I look at Michigan, they're just helter-skelter. If they don't shoot well, they lose. If they stand around and watch Xavier Simpson dribble the ball and the four stand there, they seem to lose. The last two games, they had a breakthrough. One was at the Garden against Rutgers. They considered that a home game, which I didn't like because they've got to go back to Rutgers later this season. And two, they played without Xavier Simpson, who was suspended a game, very well at Nebraska. And then last night, you watched the home debacle. Of course, the referees weren't calling a thing, but they were consistent. They called it for each side, so I can't complain. It was a lot like football. So, you know, the hooking, the grabbing, the clutching, and et cetera. But, you know, Xavier had 15 points. Davis had 11, who only averages 4 plus a game, by the way. And nobody else was in double figures. They lost to Ohio State 61-58. And a glaring stat to me, which stands out for Michigan, is they only had 10 assists in the game. Deshaun, what does Michigan need to do to turn it around?
I think, you know, there's some of the things that they can't really control very much from a team standpoint. And I say all that because this is realistically just not Juwan Howard's team. He's just working with what he has and what's left over from what John Beilein left behind. Depending on who you're asking, whether they have exceeded expectations or met expectations or just slightly below that. And I think it's right around where I thought that it would be. Now, at the beginning of the season, I was certainly singing a different tune just because of the simple fact that, you know, they were an unranked team. They're still the only team to beat Gonzaga, and that was on a neutral site by more than 20 points, close to 30 if I'm not mistaken. And then they start looking totally different after that.
You had the injury to what? You had the injury there to
Livers.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, Livers. You was the second leading scorer. You had the injury. I know that hurt, but to me, they're so inconsistent and so streaky. If they would just move the ball, I think they could be really good.
It was. And I agree with that. I just think that from a talent standpoint, it's not there. But depending on what your expectations are, you know, if you're thinking Michigan's going to be a Sweet 16 team or go further in the tournament than that, I don't think that was realistic. I think they would have been lucky to be, you know, a team that made it out of the first round of the NCAA tournament. It certainly wouldn't have surprised me if they didn't make the tournament. But really, I thought that they are certainly a first weekend tournament team for sure to get a win or two under their belt, but for certain to at least get into the NCAA tournament. You know, and I mean, I like John Teskey personally. You know, I really like his game and style of play. He's a bruiser up front, you know, a big guy, and can every now and then step out and hit the jump shot as well. But, you know, this is a team that has tend to struggle a little bit, and it's hard to really grasp or gauge exactly what it is with this team as if they're a pretender or a contender in terms of in the conference, just because of the simple fact that the conference is so tough. I don't question if Michigan right now was in the SEC or any of these other conferences that they could be right there in the upper echelon of the conference, but because the Big Ten is so tough this year, it's really hard. I'm not going to go as far as saying I'm happy to see, but I think that it's certainly good for Michigan to get the win that they did this week over Ohio State. Two teams that peaked really early and looked really good and got all the way up into the top 5 of college basketball rankings this year before falling out. And I think that those are two teams that could potentially get into the tournament, but those meetings between those two teams is really going to be very telling on Selection Sunday when it's time to review some resumes.
It is, and there's talk the Big Ten might get 10 teams. I'm not so sure about that. You know, Michigan has lost each of its contests to Ohio State this year. That was a tough one last night, losing 61-58. But, you know, I was going to talk Mark D'Antonio with you, but we're out of time. Maybe you could come on next week and talk about that, because this story is going to grow. As you know, he did step down yesterday It's, as the head football coach of Michigan State, he was the most successful he had the most wins of any coach in Michigan State football history. Won, got the team to the playoff, won the Big Ten 3 times, and et cetera. It was interesting timing that he stepped down because it was the day before signing day. But we'll get into that more in depth. The story's going to grow. We're out of time today. Maybe we can talk about that next week briefly, and we'll talk a little bit more basketball if you want to come back on the air next week. Hopefully JJ and Stephanie will join me, and I won't be doing this thing solo, but JJ's got a lot going on now. He's got a little one coming. So, I completely understand about that. So, Deshaun, thanks so much for coming on the show. You're a friend of the show, and we look forward to talking to you really soon.
Hey, TC, thank you so much, man, for having me. You're doing a great job. I know it's not the easiest thing in the world to be flying this thing solo, but you're doing a really outstanding job. I really appreciate you for having me, and, hoping that things are going well for you. At Tates Take Hoops on the Twitter, as well as on the IG or the Instagram or the Gram or whatever the cool kids are calling it these days. That is at TATESTAKEHOOPS. And of course, as you know, that's where basketball lives. So thank you much.
That's right. You can catch him also on Twitter at tell him your Twitter handle there, Deshaun.
Tates Take Hoops, TATESTAKEHOOPS, where basketball lives. And let me tell you something else. We got really awesome podcasts going on, high school, college, NBA, everything basketball you can think of. Let me tell you something. If it's 94 feet long, 50 feet wide, 22 feet and 1 1/3 inches out on the perimeter and 10 feet high, it's all of Tate's Take, man. So that's accessible. That's the Tate's Take podcast. That's accessible to, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Red Circle, the whole 9. So I like to think that you will enjoy it. It's very informational. It's very educational. And you might get a laugh every good now and then. Probably a harder laugh than you did when I mentioned that the Atlanta Hawks might be considering Tristan Thompson.
Hey, I tell you what, you just never know. Once I get myself well, I'll have to come down there and see the Hawks game. You take care, and maybe we'll one day see a Michigan State game up in either Ann Arbor or East Lansing. Take care of yourself, my friend. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you much. Looking forward to it.
Deshaun Tate, college basketball insider and NBA insider, 92.9 The Game here in Atlanta. I want to thank everyone. I know the show went a little over today. Deshaun, he called himself Deshaun Late instead of Deshaun Tate. That was a hoot. I have to put that on Twitter. I want to thank our caller there that called in, Wayne from Memphis. Thank Dave Cohen of Georgia State, the voice of the Panthers, football, basketball, baseball, for calling in and talking about Georgia State basketball. And I want to thank Deshaun, who just came on here, talked about MSU basketball, Michigan basketball, and your Atlanta Hawks here in Atlanta. My name's Todd Corder. Once again, thanks for listening. You can catch me on Twitter at CORDER, Todd, TODD. Please tweet me anytime you like. Keep it clean. I'll tweet back no matter what the sport is or what your interest is or what your team is. I want to thank Brett in Los Angeles for covering the board here this morning. For Mark Mancini, for JJ, and for Stephanie, I'm Todd Corder. They like to call me TC. Over and out. This is ATL Prime Sports. Have a safe week, everybody. Good night.